Pretty Little Wife, a novel, by Darby Kane. Chapter 1. A monster. She missed the signs before. Maybe ignored them without fully realizing it. Now she couldn't unsee them. Adrenaline raced through her as she tore their bedroom apart, overturned the laundry basket and scattered the contents, shoved the bed, banging her shin on the metal bed frame before pushing the mattress to check underneath. Crawled on her knees across the floor, ignoring the shooting pain as bone struck hardwood. She even checked behind the heavy curtains he insisted they use because light in the morning gave him a headache. The revulsion festering inside her, carefully tucked away for years so as not to spill over and contaminate their tenuous peace, exploded. A wave of scalding heat ran through her, poisoning and erasing every good memory. The stupid blackout curtains. She'd searched for weeks for the combination of the right color and the perfect dark liner he'd barked at her to find. Never mind that she preferred waking up to the light pouring in, or that the heavy material gave the room a suffocating sense of darkness. His rules, and his needs. All of her energy, all of that pent-up hate, built and concentrated until it boiled. The recent string of slights and snide comments she'd ignored. The frustration she choked back. The disappointment that she'd let her need to feel normal, to mimic everyone around her, lead her here. To him. Throwing all her weight into it, she tugged and yanked on those precious curtains, pulled as a scream rumbled up her throat. A ripping sound screeched through the room, and her balance faltered. The stiff material she'd pulled painfully taut at last gave. The left side shredded on the rod, and the pressure holding her up released in a whoosh. Her feet tangled, and she fell. She landed in a hard sprawl near the end of the bed, then stayed there, staring at a blank space on the white wall, wishing she'd made better choices. There, in the quiet, she heard the snap. That barrier deep inside her, walled off and hollow, that allowed her to stumble along and ignore what she needed to ignore, crashed down. Anger and distaste, disappointment and guilt. The emotions tumbled and mixed, spilling through her, flooding every cell. As soon as the rush of flaming heat arrived, it evaporated, dried up and disappeared in the space between breaths. She felt nothing. Chapter 2. An hour had passed since the initial frenzy. She'd managed to sit up, but not much more. She balanced on the edge of their bed, buried in a pile of clothing, dirty and clean mixed until one merged into the other. Jeans and sweatshirts lay scattered around, thrown in her haste to dig to the back of every drawer and search through every hidden nook. Random thoughts slipped into her mind, then whipped right back out again. She couldn't hold on to an idea, or manufacture an explanation for what she'd found. None that made sense, or matched the stories he told. Not one. The truth bombarded her, but her brain refused to focus. Every time she tried to fit the pieces together to decipher, something inside her misfired. Such an ordinary thing landed her here, in this upended state. Clothing. She'd been searching for the t-shirt he blamed her for misplacing while doing the laundry, as if that were even possible. Lila? She jerked at the sound of her name. He shouldn't be home for hours. Of course, he picked today to slip away early. To surprise her. What do you want now? Where are you? He shouted to her as he stomped through the house. Her muscles refused to move. They'd clamped down, locking her in a haze of blurry vision and fogged thinking. The damn videos. She'd punished herself by watching the first one. Then the next. That's as far as she got before the breath left her body. Minutes ticked by while she stared at the cell screen. Her fingers clenched around the phone she'd never seen before. The one he hid from her in the chest of drawers he insisted she leave alone because she didn't fold clothing the way he wanted it folded. Stored behind stacks of thin and faded t-shirts he kept promising to weed out and throw away. So many promises. Gone. Didn't take a genius to guess why he'd been so territorial over a piece of furniture. It was his hiding place. The phone clearly meant something to him, or she would have known about it before now. No one hid meaningless things. The screen, now dark, the battery having blinked off, tormented her. Somewhere in minute 2 or 3 of listening to those female voices spin in her head, her brain clicked off. All those years of pushing the dark back, of denying and pretending she'd locked this type of horror out of her life, of wallowing in guilt until it threatened to suck her under, jammed up on her. The memories. They flooded her now. All the yelling and name-calling. The questions. So many questions. This couldn't be happening again. Lila, where the hell are you? The house was big, but not that big. He'd find her soon, in the massive bedroom at the far end of the hall, lost in a pile of his precious belongings. Hey, his voice faded as he stalked into the middle of the wardrobe bloodbath and stopped. What the hell happened in here? Why did you touch my stuff? His stuff. He viewed everything, even her, as his property. For a few seconds she stared at him, and wondered why she'd ever agreed to that first date. He'd been charming, sure. All guy next door, with his light brown hair and bright blue eyes. He was tall, but not threateningly so. Attractive in his confidence. His smile had won her over. He seemed harmless. That's what she'd craved. The benign. Now she wanted to punch that mouth, and keep hitting until silence blanketed her. Why are you just sitting there? What's wrong with you? He asked as he turned in a slow circle, taking in every inch of her rampage. I was looking for your shirt. Her voice came out steady, amazing even her. The one you lost. He said it as if that were a fact. I appreciate the effort, but you should have asked before you went rifling through my things. I live here too. Okay, but you have to admit that this looks... What? She had no idea how he would twist his way out of this one. Unhinged. Oh, right. Of course he would say that. Blame her. This time only, he wasn't wrong. She felt unwound, held together by a thin thread of sheer will and nothing more. I found this. She held up the new-to-her phone. His expression didn't change. His mouth didn't so much as twitch. What is it? As if he didn't know. The lying asshole. Don't do that. It's yours, and we both know it. He let out a long breath. It came out as an exhausted sigh, as if he'd been stuck with her for too long and had grown weary. Now, don't get hysterical. Gaslighting. She heard it in the fake, soothing cadence of his voice, in every syllable. I haven't moved. She forced her voice to stay flat, sucked all of the emotion out of the words to prevent him from throwing them back at her. He glanced at the phone, then to her face. But you've let your imagination run wild. I know you. He didn't, but leave it to him to find a way to make himself the wronged party in this. That's not true. Look at this mess. He motioned toward the empty dresser drawers. She tightened her grip on the phone. You didn't even use a different pin. That's enough. The deeper they waded into the emotional morass, the more in control he sounded. That placating voice. He even held up his hands in mock surrender as if he needed to calm her down. Listen to me. Go ahead. Try to explain. I shouldn't have to. He stopped the sentence there and held her gaze for a few seconds with an unwavering glare. But the reality is it's nothing. A practical joke by a couple of students that went sideways. Nothing to worry about. He thought she was an idiot. That was the only explanation. Her muscles shook, but she forced her body up. Somehow managed to get to her feet and stay there. I know what I saw. He sighed at her again, full of indignation and unsteady tolerance. What do you think you saw? Because I promise you're wrong. More gaslighting. The trick jumped out at her now. He formed sentences and revised history to make her think she was the unreasonable one. Turned and twisted the facts until she questioned her brain and her eyes, dumped her in a place where she doubted everything except him. Not this time. He'd done the one thing she couldn't slap an explanation on or let him weasel out of or chisel down into nothing. Her fingers clenched around the phone until the plastic dug into her palm. Get out. All that fake civility vanished as his mouth curled in a snarl. It's my fucking house. He had never hit her, but maybe that had been a matter of good timing and a bit of luck. The right push, and this could be it. Every cell inside her screamed to move, but she refused to back down. She took a step closer, challenging him on the most basic level, questioning what he insisted belonged solely to him. She lifted her chin higher. The house is ours. His hand whipped out and caught her around the throat. Say that again. She tried to swallow, but couldn't. Said his name, but it came out as a harsh whisper. Her spirit refused to break. It's ours. Mine as much as yours. Those fingers flexed against her skin, his palm pressed against her windpipe, daring her to push him past the brink. He didn't squeeze, but the hatred pulsing off him told her he could, and would never regret it. Pure disdain. There was no other way to describe it, as if he wouldn't blink if she disappeared. He leaned in until his mouth hovered over her ear. Did you pay for the house, Lila? One mortgage payment, one tax payment, a water bill? He'd put her name on the title, but he viewed the property as his. He deposited money into the joint account to cover bills. Not a penny more. He let her write the actual checks, but he controlled every dime every month. Then looked like he expected her to thank him for being a great provider. You never gave me that choice. She wanted them to be equals. That's what she'd signed up for when they got married. It's what they'd agreed to. But with each year, he took more control and lessened her role. Turned her into some sort of dress-up doll he paraded around town. She silently fought back by going out to dinner less and never attending his events. He'd sweet talk and push, and now she recognized every move as manipulation. Nothing more than a long con that she'd fallen for until he'd gone one step too far. I run this household, he said. His money, his house. He made the decisions, even the ones that impacted her job and where they lived. Him. She'd conceded so much ground to him. She had no idea when it had happened, or why she'd let her life get so small. No more. The unspoken declaration vibrated through her. Do it, or let go. Her voice strained against his hand. He frowned at her. What? Kill me. That's where this is heading, right? Every move and the dragging anger in his voice pointed there. Despite his need for control, his mood had always been pretty even. But she had something on him now. Something that could break him and ruin that shiny reputation he stoked with neighborly good deeds and a fake smile. It was as if her breaking point this afternoon tipped off his. He shook his head, but didn't let go of her neck. Her hand covered his. She tried to pry his fingers off, to put an inch of distance between them as the panic constricted her throat. That quickly, he dropped his arm to his side. The swift move had her tipping forward when all she wanted to do was run away. After a few seconds of her stumbling, he put his hands on her forearms to steady her. I'm not the kind of man who hits. Because that's the bar. You don't beat me, so you're a great husband. You're pushing me, Lila. I advise you to stop. He never blinked as he watched her. This thing with the phone really is nothing. Don't let your imagination fill in gaps that don't exist. The videos, he made a tut-tutting sound. I told you. Silly girls doing silly things. That's all. Liar. It was as if he'd forgotten about her previous life. She'd played verbal gymnastics with people much more cunning than him. The kind who would be smart enough not to use the same password on their secret phone as they used on their usual one. If that's true, then why did you save them? And why hide the phone? For insurance. How? Even if the videos were a prank, they could be used to ruin you. I heard your voice on one. She feared she would never forget what she'd heard. Explain how you've protected yourself. Us. I don't appreciate your tone. When she started to respond to that, he held up a hand and talked over her. This discussion is over. I've told you what you need to know, and now you can stop worrying about this. There's more to it than the videos. I have the whole matter handled. She knew that was a lie. All of this was one big lie. She didn't ask anything else, because the responses would be more of the same. Nonsense and bullshit. He smiled in a way that made her feel more like prey than a wife. Now that we've resolved that. He leaned in and kissed her on the forehead. She fought off a flinch, but just barely. Maybe that's where he wanted her energy focused, because he swooped in and pried the phone out of her hand before she realized what was happening. Clean this room up. I came home early to take you to dinner, but I can't do that with this mess. Then he walked out, his cell phone in hand. To him, that was it. He actually thought his comments and weak assurances ended the conversation, that she would slink back into her life, forget what she'd seen, and move on. That she was too stupid to have forwarded some of the videos to her email before the battery on his top-secret phone died. She would review them all and tease out every detail. And no, she would not let him turn this around and make it her fault. He'd always known the one thing she could not live through again, and he'd crashed their marriage right into it. She'd handle it. She didn't before, but she would this time. She would be the one to stop him. Chapter 3. 6 weeks later, end of September. A normal Tuesday. The relatively boring nature of the usual morning schedule would tumble through Lila Ridgefield's mind every time she thought back on this day. Nothing different. Nothing to see here. She walked around all morning, groggy and unsettled. Nursed a cup of coffee as it morphed from piping hot to lukewarm to sour and cold. By a little after 10, she slipped out of her comfortable pajamas and put on long, flowy black dress pants and a green silk blouse, the kind of outfit worn by ladies who enjoyed a fancy lunch out at the club but didn't do much else with their time. The temptation to find sweats or yoga pants tugged at her, but she didn't give in. She maintained the image Aaron wanted, even this morning. Casual clothes would be out of character. People would notice. Today needed to look like a normal day. Blend in so nothing stuck out as unusual or worse, memorable. The wardrobe specifications had been a request from Aaron early in their marriage. After suffering through a difficult childhood, complete with the loss of both parents, he insisted a family look a certain way to the outside world. For his wife, if only on the exterior, and to others, to come off as put together and project a certain image at all times. For them to have a weekly housekeeping service and meal delivery for the times when neither of them wanted to cook. For anyone watching to see success. She chalked up the request to his idealized view of family, one different from what he'd known. It was as if he believed if he had all the outside trappings, from the big house to the perfect wife, the rest would fall in line. No one could question or destroy it. She understood, because she'd maneuvered her way through a dysfunctional upbringing, and knew the things you grabbed onto to survive weren't always rational. At the beginning of their marriage, the Aaron-imposed public dress code, while sometimes annoying, wasn't a problem. It blended in with what she needed to wear to the office. That changed when they moved and she left her job, but his requirements for that dream of perfection never dimmed. Now, he couldn't play that game, thanks to her. Today, she complied on her terms. She picked the perfect outfit to stand outside on the long driveway that twisted its way up to her sprawling ranch house at the top of the hill. Hair styled and a light touch of makeup, ready to fake mourn. The gardeners deserved the credit for the pristine lawn and intricately shaped bushes. Her contribution amounted to writing a check for their services every month. Growing up, her father viewed mowing as a man's job, convinced she'd hurt herself. The lectures about what was and wasn't her place blurred into a humming sound in her head. His stern and disapproving voice. The way he screamed Jesus at her mother so often that Lila didn't realize it wasn't part of her mother's actual name until she got older. Right around the time the whispering about her parents started. A buzzing vibrated in her brain now. The memories itched and scratched, desperate to break through the invisible barrier she slammed into place to shut them out. She did what she always did to survive. Blocked and refocused, and this time on the warm sun. It beamed down, breaking through the lingering chill. She touched the top button of the silk cardigan draped over her shoulders and looked at the straight edge where the grass met the pavement. The line, too perfect, called out for flowers. A splash of color amid the sea of brown. Brown house siding on top of brown stone. Brown shutters with a darker brown front door. Aaron had bought the property without her input about 4 years ago. She'd stayed behind in North Carolina to clean up before their move north. He'd gone up for a quick meeting about his new teaching job and called her, shouting about a bargain. One with old plumbing and wiring so unpredictable that it prevented them from plugging in more than 2 lights in the living room at the same time during the first few months they lived there. He'd already signed the offer by the time he called. Of course he had. Still, in those earlier days, flush with a sense of hopefulness and a naive optimism about how they could do better than their parents and forge a path, she didn't recognize his move for what it was. A complete dismissal of her opinion. Treating her as an afterthought. She was wiser now. more jaded, but open to the truth about the minimal role she played in his thinking and in his life. She refocused again, this time on that razor edge of green, and thought about pink. Aaron would hate the change. He viewed pink as a direct blow to his masculinity, so pink flowers in spring it would be. After a quick scan of the quiet suburban cul-de-sacs, she took the cell phone out of her pocket and checked for messages. Nothing waited for her. Unexpected, but it was still early. She wandered down to the mailbox. After Aaron ran over the last one during a bad ice storm in March, he'd picked out one shaped like a duck as the replacement. He joked about how great it would be if it made a noise. Spent the afternoon he bought it walking around the house and scaring the crap out of her by yelling, "Quack!" She had no idea why he found that funny, or what the duck meant to him, but then many things Aaron did and said were a mystery to her. A sign hung off the duck's belly, taunting her. The Pains. Block letters of a name she'd never informally or formally agreed to take. Ridgefield was the last piece of who she'd been before. She clung to it, even as she said yes to a marriage to someone as broken as she was. Her refusal to capitulate on this one thing dropped a wedge in the center of her marriage. Her last stand led to the spousal fight that refused to die over the years. Then there was the apostrophe. She'd dared to question if one should be there, and he'd kicked the sign, shattering the bolt. The force of the blow knocked the left side from its hook and sent it swinging with a screeching sound of metal scraping against metal. She'd left the unwanted sign hanging there ever since. Crooked, half-broken, and off-center. It struck her as the perfect metaphor for their marriage. "Lila?" The sing-songy voice made Lila cringe. She managed to plaster on a smile by the time she turned to face her seemingly ever-present neighbor. "Hello." Cassie Zimmer. Every sentence she uttered ended on a tonal upswing, as if she were asking an unending series of questions instead of just talking. She smiled without ceasing. That alone made Lila want to slap her. She didn't, of course, but the temptation hovered right there. From the day they moved in, Cassie had been that neighbor. She brought cookies on her welcome to the neighborhood visit, then overstayed by walking around the living room, asking an endless line of personal questions disguised as get-to-know-you talk while she peeked at every unpacked possession. Lila had mentally put Cassie on the intolerable list she kept in her head, and Cassie had never worked her way off it again. She was a one-woman neighborhood watch. Never mind that no one asked her to step up and take the position. Worse, it was as if Cassie sensed those rare occasions when Lila stepped outside for a moment of fresh air during the day and pounced, mindless, chirpy greeting ready. To be fair, Cassie likely was fine. Probably not all that offensive. Maybe even a decent neighbor, because she'd be the first one to jump on 911 if she spied someone walking down the street whom she didn't know. But Lila valued privacy and personal space, and Cassie had only a passing acquaintance with either. "Are you thinking about doing some gardening?" Cassie winced. "Maybe not the best idea. You're a bit out of season." Small talk. Lila's least favorite thing. "We need some color out here." We, meaning her. She liked color. What Aaron wanted didn't really matter anymore. Cassie fidgeted with the broken sign under the mailbox, as if simply rehanging it would fix the household's problems. "The bolt is cracked." Cassie's head shot up. "What?" Lila refused to find a more descriptive way to say it. "No bolt." Cassie's eyes widened. "Oh, I wonder what happened to it." Aaron had. But enough chatting. I should head back inside. Lila didn't get 2 steps before Cassie wound up again. "You look nice. Are you working today?" "Today and every day." Last week, one of Aaron's fellow teachers dropped something off at the house and joked about her barely working, and then tried to cover with some drivel about her not needing to work. His grating nasal voice still rang in her ears. Her employment was one of those pressure points that made Lila grind her back teeth together. Leave it to Cassie to locate the exposed nerve, then jump up and down on it. "But yes, I need to do some research." "It must be so interesting to check out all those different houses, peek inside, and see what's really happening in there." She had to feel the conversation drag, right? Lila couldn't imagine Cassie didn't hear it, or see the attempt to escape back up the driveway and into the house. The anxiety Lila wrestled with for decades trickled in. Her control skimmed along the far edge, but soon it would crack. Then the race and swirl would begin inside her. That need to be away from people, to speak, but only on her terms. When she decided to be on, that was fine. She'd practiced the skill of pretending to be comfortable while the flight instinct kicked into high gear inside of her. She'd lower her voice, slow it down to sound more in control, concentrate so that her hands wouldn't shake. But now was not one of the times for which she could win an acting award. Stress after stress piled up. She no longer had the reserves to act like everyone expected her to act. She pulled the cell out of her pocket to stare at it again. Avoidance often helped, but still no calls. No viable excuse to transport her to somewhere else. Why hadn't the call come yet? What was taking so long? Hey, guess you're on the phone all the time. Cassie let the comment sit there, but when Lila didn't respond, Cassie rushed to fill the quiet. Being a real estate agent, I mean. You're usually on call, right? It does feel that way. She got to work as much as she wanted. He gave that to her, or so Aaron claimed. He went to work, taught math to hormonal high schoolers who viewed calculus as a punishment, and she stayed home. Some women in town once cornered her while getting coffee. Those who enjoyed small talk and big gossip told her in their voices, dripping with jealousy, how lucky she was to have a husband like Aaron, as if playing the role of pretty little wife were a gift and not a life sentence of boredom. Do you want to come over? The crunching sound of tires on gravel drowned out what sounded like an unwanted invitation for coffee. Lila had never been so happy for visitors, never been happy about guests, period, until now. She recognized the black sedan that said all of my self-esteem is bundled up in an inflated monthly car payment. Brent Little, Aaron's golfing buddy, best friend, and the principal of the high school slipped out. He wore a navy suit, looking every inch the guy who was on the hunt to find a girlfriend to replace the wife who'd left him after 16 bumpy years of unhappy marriage. He'd sported that put-together, exercise-to-exhaustion, fake-tanned outer shell for the last 2 years. Girlfriends would come and go, impressed by the flash, and then, Lila assumed, horrified by the single-digit bank balance of a man paying alimony and child support under court order for a family living 2 states away. Lila smiled, this time a genuine one, because Brent trumped Cassie as the preferred companion. Shouldn't you be sending kids to detention and hiding in the faculty lounge at this time of day? Despite her light tone, Brent's expression didn't change. Eyebrows drawn together and mouth flattened into a thin line, his usual sunny smile gone, and his steps halting instead of the rushing gait that carried him down the school hallways. Finally. This was it. She'd been waiting all morning for a visit. She hadn't expected it to be from him, but whatever. He stopped in front of Lila, sparing only a glance in Cassie's direction before he spoke. Is Aaron home? Lila felt something inside her fall. That wasn't right. That's not what he should be saying. Why would he be home? He didn't come to work. I've looked everywhere. He didn't call in sick, and when I didn't hear from you, not possible. Wait a second. She took a deep breath as she tried to maneuver through the questions bombarding her brain. I got up and he was gone, as usual. He's at the school. Because that's what they did. She stayed up at night to read or watch television. He went for a run in the early morning and fixed his breakfast, all without having to dodge her because she only got up when he was about to walk out the door. The system worked for them. That was the schedule until today. Look for his car. She couldn't believe she had to be so specific to get this part done, but fine. A strangled sound escaped Brent's throat. I've been calling him for almost 2 hours without success. His car is there. Lila knew that was true. Brent shook his head. Where? By the field behind the football stadium where he coached field hockey. That's exactly where it had to be, because that's where she put it a few hours ago while their part of the world still was plunged in darkness. She forced her brain to stay focused. At school. She understood some confusion. That was to be expected. He usually parked the SUV in an assigned spot by the school's back door, far right, first row. Aaron viewed the close-in spot as some sort of badge of honor. But that's not where they'd find it today, and they should have found it by now. Lila, listen to me. Brent put a hand on her forearm and gave it a gentle squeeze. He's not there. He never came to school today. This was ridiculous. How hard could it be to find a vehicle with a body in it? I don't get it. She choked the words out over the unexpected ball of anxiety clogging her throat. It's probably nothing, a minor accident. Cassie's voice didn't go up at the end of that sentence. I can call it. Cassie's panicked voice faded until all Lila heard was the rush of blood as it drained from her body. There's an explanation. She said the line, hoping to mentally grab on and believe it, but no. Yes, Cassie nodded in full helpful neighbor mode. Of course. He might have needed a day off from the kids. Brent let out a fake laugh that sounded more nervous than sincere. I'm tempted some days. All the words and reassurances blended in Lila's head. Brent alternated between rubbing her arm and patting it. Cassie's voice finally registered as she talked on that call. Lila heard a few whispered words. Police and missing popped out. Missing. 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 The truth body slammed her, leaving her chest heaving as she struggled for breath. The call she'd been waiting for would never come because Aaron's car wasn't in the lot or by the field. There wasn't a car to find. Despite all her careful planning, he was gone. She had to find Aaron before he found her. Chapter 4. At this time of year, the weather in the area in and around Ithaca balanced the thin line between fall and early winter. Temperatures dropped, sweaters and sturdier shoes made an appearance. This part of New York, surrounded by the Finger Lakes and shoved right up against Cayuga Lake, defined bucolic. Trees awash in vibrant color, waterfalls and hiking trails, lush gardens, and lots of places with gorge in the name. A city with a small-town buzz that expanded and contracted when the area's three schools, Cornell University, Ithaca College, and Tompkins Cortland Community College, filled and emptied as the seasons turned. A place where people enjoyed a mix of the outdoors and scholarly discussions. The favorite local pastimes included boating, coffee, and insisting no intelligent person would live in New York City for more than a few years without bolting. Lila transplanted to a neighborhood outside of Ithaca after meeting Aaron in North Carolina 8 years ago and beginning their marriage less than a year later. For Aaron, the move north was a welcome return home, or near it. He'd grown up a bit farther to the east in central New York. The area looked and felt the same to Lila, but the good people of New York knew the geographical boundary puzzle like a secret handshake. Central New York was not upstate New York. Neither had much in common, other than a shared state government with downstate. Lila stood in Aaron's empty school parking space and stared at the crowd of trees surrounding the one-story red brick building and the athletic fields in the distance. Her gaze skipped over the vehicles, most some shade of blue or red, to the far end of the lot. She scanned the fields and saw kids out running and playing some sort of sports. Not one sign of Aaron's SUV, or a hint of screams as someone peeked inside the window at his still body. Trying to end this mess, she'd insisted Brent come in by the back entrance to the school grounds. That he drive around, just in case Aaron was outside for an impromptu practice or getting some air. That was the excuse. It gave her a few minutes of silence as she traced a finger down the inside of the car window and tried to make this morning's events make sense. She focused on the exact spot where she'd parked his SUV hours ago. Lights off, drifting over divots and bumpy grass at less than 5 miles per hour, well before sunrise. Maneuvering around security cameras, she'd planned it all, and somehow it still failed. Leave it to Aaron to piss her off, even in death. Bells rang inside the building. A second later, the chaotic burst of talking and laughter seeped through the school walls and floated out to them. Lila focused on the faded white lines and the number 27 printed in the parking spot. Aaron's number. Lila? Brent's voice broke through the clanging silence in her head. Cassie had volunteered to stay behind to watch in case Aaron wandered home. Brent mentioned the police and questions. Lila heard the words, but they bounced off her, refusing to settle in. Are you okay? He asked. No, absolutely not. Where's his car? The question flipped over in her head until it slipped out. He's probably out on a ride somewhere, clearing his head or laughing at us for not trusting he'd be fine. Just enjoying the day, and then he'll come back and apologize. Wrong answer. Brent didn't know how wrong that was. He couldn't know, but she did. If Aaron showed up, if that bastard was alive, his anger would destroy everything in its path, especially her. She took out her cell and hit the app Aaron had set up in case she lost her phone. She'd added his on there, and she tried to locate it now. Nothing. Does an unexplained joyride fit with his personality? The voice followed the slam of a car door. Lila's attention shifted, but then that was clearly the goal. A woman, average height and weight, curvy, a round, striking face with big, dark eyes, short black hair, and a brisk walk. Lila didn't recognize her at all. "Excuse me?" "Ginny Davis." She held out her card. "Senior investigator." Lila turned the card over in her hand, too on edge to see anything but a smudge of black lettering. "For what?" "CID." Lila looked at the woman but didn't say anything. The woman explained anyway. "The Criminal Investigation Division of the Tompkins County Sheriff's Office." Law enforcement. Already? Lila tried to take a deep breath. Everything was moving too fast and in the wrong direction. "How did you get here so quickly?" "I called her." Brent grumbled something under his breath. "Well, my secretary did." "And your neighbor called someone?" The investigator nodded. "My office. We've received 3 calls this morning about a missing teacher. I was wrapping up another matter and agreed to swing by and see what exactly the issue was." She'd stepped in too fast. Hell, they didn't even have a body. And Lila had trouble thinking about anything else. "So you believe Aaron really is in trouble?" Brent asked. The investigator shrugged. "I have no way of knowing right now." That sounded like the right answer to Lila. Smart and effective. It didn't overpromise. It also matched the woman standing in front of Lila in a navy pantsuit. Not cheap, but not expensive. The kind that mostly fit, except for the slightly too long pants and a waistband that required a belt. She didn't make any attempt to hide her visual once-over of the area, or of Brent and Lila. "Are you Mrs. Payne?" The name ripped across Lila's senses, blocking out everything else. "Lila Ridgefield, Aaron's wife." Brent said the words in a rush, as if the women needed his guidance through the conversation. Ginny, because that's how Lila already started to think of her, rather than as some faceless, nameless investigator, didn't even blink. "Several people seem concerned about your husband and his whereabouts. We likely don't have anything to worry about. Most people show up within a day or two and have an explanation." Yeah, that better not happen. Your response really didn't answer my question. Why are you here now? I'm doing a courtesy check only. Right now, there's nothing to investigate. Ginny focused on Brent. "Mr. Little?" "Yes." After a quick handshake, Brent returned to his position slightly behind Lila. "Aren't you supposed to wait 48 hours before you start investigating?" "That's a bit of a Hollywood myth, based on the idea that grown-ups sometimes wander but usually come back. We don't want to waste resources, but we don't want to lose precious search time either." Ginny's eyebrow lifted as she looked from Brent to Lila. "Unless you want us to hold off for some reason?" "No." Brent shuffled his feet and stammered for a solid minute before kicking out an answer. "No, of course not. If someone truly is missing, we'd rather know immediately and start working." Ginny's gaze switched to Lila. "Before the trail goes cold." "Right." Brent nodded as he regained his composure. "When Aaron didn't show up today, I went over to their house and broke the news to Lila." Ginny frowned again. "What news?" "That my husband isn't where he should be." Brent nodded. She wanted to come to the school to see for herself. The conversation struck Lila as obvious and not half as interesting as Ginny's intense stare suggested. "When did you last see your husband, Miss Ridgefield?" Now the questions would start. The need for explanations, the digging into her marriage, taking apart every sentence, every choice, every piece of her life with Aaron. He'd gone missing, and the spotlight would shine on her, casting shadows everywhere. He wasn't where he was supposed to be, and she would pay. She'd prepared for so many contingencies, but not this one. All of them depended on Aaron being found. Lila took a long breath. "Last night." "Not this morning?" The verbal dance annoyed Lila. The detective, or whatever she was, had a job to do. Lila needed to find her husband, and didn't believe someone who didn't know him, who might get sucked in by his outward charm, could find him faster than she could. "No, which is why I said last night." Ginny's gaze bounced from Brent to Lila. "Is Aaron the type to take a day off without warning?" That question was easy to answer because it was a point of pride to Aaron, which Lila found ridiculous. "Not at all. He's had perfect attendance for the almost 4 years he's been here," Brent said as he shook his head. "Hasn't missed a day. Even comes in when he's sick, which is against the rules, but we make an exception. His record and personality are why we called your office immediately, rather than waiting to see if he showed up. That's who he is." Lila wasn't sure if that fact helped her or not, but she wanted the lead role in shaping that vision for any and all law enforcement who stumbled into the case. "Okay." Ginny's gaze lingered on Lila before she turned to Brent again. I understand what you're both saying, but is there anywhere... On a weekday during the school year, he goes to work. That's the point. The thumping in Lila's head kicked up, threatening to swallow the last of her attention. Ginny's gaze snapped right back to Lila. Except today. The noise from inside the school spilled out. Two boys yelled with hands raised as they stumbled outside and stepped in and out of each other's personal space. No one crowded in or joined them in their amateur fight, but faces appeared in the door's glass and a rapt audience formed. Brent's focus shot to the door. If you'll excuse me. He was off, with those long legs chewing up the feet between them and the brewing fight. The second he stepped in, the shouts of juvenile retribution cut off. After some finger-pointing, the chaos moved back inside the building. May I call you Lila? Ginny asked. If this were a game, then Lila would play too. May I call you Ginny? Sure. The older woman dropped the clipped response before launching into a new topic. Is there anyone you can think of who might want to hurt your husband? Yeah, her. At any other time, under any other situation, Lila might admire Ginny's style. She verbally zigged and zagged, asked what she needed to ask, the usual initial questions, most likely, but Lila sensed Ginny didn't care much about the answers. Fact-finding was not the purpose of this trip, at least not in the sense of hearing the one thing that might explain how a 37-year-old man vanished on his way to work. No, this back and forth was about sizing her up. Ginny's gaze assessed every stray move and every swallow. She pinned Lila under an unseen microscope and gently poked around. Lila's senses screamed at her to be careful, to cut this short before the anxiety crawling through her burst out of her like a bad horror movie. He's a high school math teacher. Teachers have enemies. Lila refused to take the bait. I'm trying to understand what we're looking at here. Jenny's soothing voice, deep and calm, had a hypnotizing effect. There were no car accidents in the area this morning with his make of car. No John Doe fitting his description at any local hospitals. Aren't you thorough? A tiny smile broke over Ginny's lips. Always. Lila forced the sensation rushing through her back, the one that shouted to pick flight over fight, as she watched the woman who might feign friendship and support but would likely become her adversary, and a worthy one. Ginny took out a small notebook and scribbled a few things down. She handled the situation with the confidence of a person who'd fought and clawed her way into the position she held, and refused to relinquish it. As a black woman high up in law enforcement, she likely both earned respect and spent most of her day demanding it from men who would prefer to ignore her. May I go home? Lila asked, because the house would ground her as she tried to reason out what happened this morning. Ginny nodded. If Aaron doesn't show up by this time tomorrow, I'd like you to come to my office, and you can come to my house and ask whatever you want. Now or later, it doesn't matter to me. When Ginny didn't jump on the offer, Lila fell back on reason. Isn't that better? I'm inviting you in. You can walk through and look around. No need for probable cause or a warrant. Lila found her first smile of the day. Did I forget to mention I'm a lawyer? She had to drop that piece of intel sooner or later. Now it worked. Ginny's eyes narrowed. One of the people who called mentioned you were a real estate agent. Huh. Interesting. Why does my career matter? Not that this was a sensitive subject for her, but it was. Technically, you mentioned it first. A small smile came and went on Ginny's mouth. But if you're asking why, I know. The fact is in my notes. The person calling likely volunteered. The tension snapping between them subsided. The air shifted, as if they'd reached more even footing. The gun and badge and whatever else Ginny carried in or under that suit might win most battles, but Lila had a few weapons of her own. Anything else I should know about you? Ginny asked. I expect you to find Aaron. If you can't do that, I'll hire someone who can. As soon as the words left her mouth, Lila realized she'd spoken her first lie of the day. That's not how it works. I know Aaron is not the only missing person in the area. Lila had been following along on the news and listening to a weekly true crime podcast that highlighted the case. She'd done her homework before she launched her plan. The horrible backdrop of a missing woman might help blur the picture of what happened to her husband. Of course, that all depended on Aaron staying dead. Ginny didn't so much as twitch at being thrust in the heated spotlight for questioning. Do you think the cases are related? I hope not, since you haven't found her yet. Chapter 5. 3 weeks earlier. Aaron set the plate in front of her. grilled chicken, and a salad. It was his go-to meal on his night to make dinner. They took turns when they ate in, but he took more food shifts than she did. Probably because her cooking skills extended to grilled cheese and pasta and not 1 inch further. Pasta. That's what she really wanted tonight. She'd watched a cooking show this morning and now craved cacio e pepe. She'd never had it, but the idea of noodles with cheese and pepper sounded so simple and delicious that it made her despise the chicken without tasting it. Aaron stood there, looming over his side of the square table instead of sitting down. You're staring at the plate. It looks good. Sitting there, moving the food around on her plate, all she could think about was how she'd folded her life into his. Her needs grew smaller and smaller, less important and less of a priority, until only broken pieces of what she thought marriage would be remained. The relationship didn't start that way. He'd been a regular at the sandwich place across from her office, where she went to pick up lunch and sometimes dinner. She'd see him and catch him glancing her way. They eventually met when he dropped a full travel coffee mug right in front of her. Stunned and stammering, he apologized and shot her a sweet smile. He was attractive in a non-threatening way. A little quiet, with a tough background she would learn rivaled her own on the pain scale. So she let him in. Let him as far in as she let anyone, which, to be fair, was not far. From the beginning, neither demanded much of the other. They built a relationship based on companionship and understanding. He didn't balk at her need for alone time. He liked to fish and was fine to do that without her. He provided stability and safety. When she thought about family, she thought about a home and dinner at the table and the absence of yelling. With him, she had all those things. She'd never looked at Aaron and felt a breathy rush of desire or the need to strip off his clothes and have sex against a wall. They'd done that, but the zing she was supposed to feel never hit her. But it wasn't just Aaron. For most of her life, she hadn't felt the thrumming sensation. A few twinges of attraction, but the idea of purposely seeking out something fleeting, based on hormones and body parts that could disappear with the wrong haircut or by gaining 20 pounds, seemed like a waste of time. In reality, she'd spent her entire life running from that out-of-control dynamic in search of safety, and would only base a marriage on the latter. Her fear sent her spinning into the arms of the very thing she sought to escape. Jim told me a funny story today. She couldn't call up any interest in what Aaron had to say, let alone some boring story from a random guy. Jim? The chair leg scraped against the floor as Aaron pulled it out and sat down. Biology teacher from Maine. The one with the thick accent? She pretended to care as she moved the lettuce around on her plate. Oh, right. He slept in his car last night. They hadn't gotten to that point, but Aaron did use the guest bedroom right now. Lila refused to feel guilty about that. He deserved to be banished. She'd wanted to pummel him, slap him, something that ended with a crack of skin against skin. Anything to break through the frozen mush of disdain she felt for him. But she had to wait, plan, make her move at the right time. Why? She put down the fork, abandoning any pretense of interest in the food. He and the wife argued about money. I once read that money is the issue couples fight about the most. Not them, not usually, but other couples. They had enough issues without adding stressed economics to the pile. Well, it happened with Jim, and Aaron flipped his fork around in the air. I can't remember her name. Of course he didn't. Aaron sucked at names. Not guy names. No, he knew the mailman's name and the guy who worked at the coffee place he stopped at after his Saturday morning run. Even the guy who'd sold him that overly bright blue paint for the bathroom last year. But someone's wife, or girlfriend, or a female colleague? He stumbled every single time. It was as if all women registered in his mind only in connection to some guy he knew. Let's make this easier. Call her Anne. Lila reached for a roll. Go on with the story. Right. Aaron pushed the butter closer to her before talking again. And, that might actually be her name. I doubt it. Her knife scraped across the plate as she scooped the butter up. What? She preferred the uncomfortable silence of the last few weeks to actual conversation. You were saying? At least once a week during their marriage, he accused her of not listening or showing any signs of caring about his work, so she pretended. So much pretending. Anne is a vet. She works at that animal hospital around the corner from that taqueria we like near Ithaca Commons. Aaron stared at her for a few beats of silence before continuing. She makes something like 3 times what he takes home as a high school teacher, and it's killing him. Aaron had her attention now. The way he sat forward in his seat with his elbows balanced on the edge of the table, the excitement in his eyes, and that insipid smile. It was as if he were internally cheering at the idea of a guy's marriage crumbling thanks to a dented ego. He tried to tell her that she made him feel inferior, and she told him he was. Lila felt a sudden kinship with the nameless woman. Maybe he is. Yeah, right. Aaron laughed as he reached over and tore off a piece from one of the rolls in the basket. Didn't grab the whole thing because he tried to limit his carb intake. He insisted only a bite was enough to satisfy him. Then she kicked him out. Sounds fair. He had the nerve to frown at her. You're not serious. I actually am. You take her side even though you don't know her? He popped the piece of bread in his mouth. Neither do you, apparently. He shook his head. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Let's examine the fact scenario you laid out. Why does he care how much she earns? I assume they both benefit from her paycheck. The money goes into an account, or they're like us, multiple accounts, and then the bills get paid. She shrugged. You should thank her for doing more than her share and be grateful. Then shut up. Look at you, sticking up for Jim's wife. Aaron sat back in his chair, causing the wood to groan under the strain of his weight. Sounds like someone should. At least you're finally talking to me. He sounded unhappy about that. Aren't I lucky? Yeah, she'd screwed up and let her indifference slip, but what the hell? Defending the woman they'd renamed Anne made her happier than anything else in the house had for months. I can stop. You're too busy judging Jim and Anne to be quiet. She snorted and liked the sound so much she did it again. Don't pretend you know her name. What the fuck is wrong with you? I'm trying to have a normal conversation. Her fault. He always made everything her fault. Shifted the burden and played the victim. You get ticked off when we don't talk about your work. Now that we are, you're ticked off about that too. It's hard to make you happy. He let his hand fall against the tabletop with a hard slap. Married couples talk, Lila. She could barely tolerate being in the same room with him. Not after those videos. Did you read that somewhere? This shit is you, not me. He stood up and thudded across the kitchen to the refrigerator to grab another light beer, his second. It's not normal. You're closed off, go stone cold. You don't care about anyone. His words tripped over one another as he rushed to list her flaws. We barely talk. You don't even go outside all that much. I show houses. He held up both hands as if he'd stepped into an impromptu religious revival meeting. Ah, yes, your precious fucking job. She shoved her plate toward the middle of the table. Is this still about Jim and whatever her name is, or are you really upset about my career choice? He snorted. The one you barely do. At your insistence. Don't blame me for your choices. So now I don't work enough? Your usual argument is that you prefer for me not to work because you don't want all your little school and coaching friends to think you can't support us. She forced her fingers to unclench around the knife and set it down when she really wanted to throw it. Make up your mind, Aaron. He leaned against the sink with his hands balanced on the counter on either side of him. You are so hard to love. The shot bounced off her, as if he knew what the word even meant, as if she cared if he got enough pampering and cuddling. He'd screwed up this pathetic excuse of a marriage, not her. So you've said. She hit him with an eye roll because she knew the gesture battered his control. If he wanted to fight, then they should really fight. Scream and accuse, dump all their personal garbage right on the floor and sort through it with a chainsaw. Don't do that. Fight back without the passive-aggressive bullshit. Show me you care at least a little. His anger bubbled and churned right below the surface. Another push or two should do it. My personality hasn't changed from the day we met. I'm not the problem in this marriage, darling. How many times do I have to apologize for what happened? Try doing it once. Just one lousy time. The asshole got caught and lied. Insisted the videos on his phone from his damn students, intimate videos, meant nothing when they really could ruin him. She was saving him, but he conveniently ignored that fact, which was smart because she didn't plan on doing it for much longer. You've never taken 1 ounce of responsibility for your shitty choices. His mouth thinned and a tiny muscle in his cheek twitched. He watched her, looking ready to spring, then took a sharp turn away and stared out the window above the sink, out into the darkness. We had this fight weeks ago. I told you it was a prank gone wrong. I'm not reliving this nonsense again. Let it go. Wait, was that your apology? You're blameless, I suppose. You kicked me out of our bed. You barely speak to me. Have you left the damn house in 3 weeks? Because to me it looks like you're sulking rather than trying to put this marriage back together. She would not let him spin this back on her. He was lucky she let him in the house at all. Still waiting for that apology. He turned and faced her again, breathing heavy and grabbing the counter in a white-knuckled grip, as if he could no longer hold the icy edge of dislike from spilling out. Oh, for something minor. Something a bunch of stupid kids did? Not gonna happen. She pressed her hand against her chest in mock surprise. Right. How dare I suggest you've ever done anything wrong in your life? Silly me. It's always the rest of us who are wrong. Tell me your theory about the video. His mouth twisted in a hateful scowl. Say it. Videos, plural. You're a pitiful excuse for a man. He snorted. You wouldn't know what to do with a man. Every word he uttered breathed more life into her hatred, gave it legs and a beating heart, fueled it until it sucked all of the air out of the room. I'm not the one who messed up. I didn't either. He was delusional. How can you say that? He shook his head as he left the room. Fuck you, Lila. Chapter 6. Present Day. This is Nia Sims and Gone Missing, the true crime podcast that discusses cases, big and small, in your neighborhood and around the country. While we usually delve into cold cases, pick apart the clues, and talk about other possibilities, and we will get back to that, we're switching gears today. Just like last week, we're focusing on the case everyone is talking about. We usually don't jump in and review an active case for fear of getting in the way, but this one is happening right in our backyard, and it's possible one of our listeners saw or heard something that might be helpful. We're talking, of course, about Karen Blue, the SUNY Cortland sophomore. Campus video shows she got in her car about 8 weeks ago and left school to visit her parents for their anniversary weekend and was never seen again. We know this case is all over the news. This is a multi-agency investigation. There's a task force. Local and state police are on it. The sheriff's office weighed in, and now the FBI is stepping in. That's a lot of resources with no resolution. We've all seen the grainy video of Karen putting a bag in her trunk before getting in and driving away. That was 61 days ago. Since then, not a word from Karen. Law enforcement have ruled out the idea of her voluntarily leaving or hurting herself. This is a case of foul play. Her parents are frantic. The police have searched her boyfriend's house twice. One of Karen's friends gave an interview talking about the boyfriend's temper. This was looking like a relationship turned violent, a horrible but not unheard of story. But notice I said was. Let's think about this case another way. What if Karen wasn't the first woman to go missing in the area without any explanation over the last few years? We spent weeks looking into this question and believe something bigger, more malicious might be happening in this part of New York. We actually have a trio of missing women, and we're going to talk about the one question the police have refused to answer. What if the disappearances are related? Lila? She hit pause on her tablet. The voice cut off mid-sentence through the all-house speakers as her brother-in-law shut the front door and walked down the hall toward her. He leaned over the kitchen island and kissed her on the cheek. What the hell are you listening to? I was trying to keep my mind busy. Which wasn't a lie. It wasn't easy to have a nice lunch when her dead husband might not be dead. Uh-huh. You know, background noise. When he continued to stare at her, she tried again. It's that true crime podcast that's been all over the news. Jaren's expression went blank. What? The one started by the Syracuse University graduate student as part of her class project? When Jared didn't move, Lila tried again. Her name is Nia. She's on once or twice a week and sometimes does interim videos with updates of the cases she and her followers are reviewing. She's been interviewed on the news. Still, not one bit of recognition on her brother-in-law's face, so she tried again. She's very determined, which is great because from what I can tell, she has a big following of armchair detectives who are experts at using the internet. She's using those minions to keep pressure on law enforcement, the media, and this task force about Karen Blue's case. Jared shook his head. You lost me at podcast. Really? The guy needed to step out of his office now and then. Karen Blue? Straight brown hair, athletic, really pretty? Do I know her? Forget it. Lila eased the seat around and jumped off the stool. Coffee? She didn't wait for an answer. Jared always said yes to coffee. If she offered water, he said yes. A cookie, he took it. He was the most agreeable person she'd ever met. Brent called. He took the seat she'd just vacated and reached for the mug when she offered it. Have you heard anything? What are the police saying about Aaron? The slight tremor in his voice had her glancing up. Where lately Aaron's mood bounced around, Jared's hummed along nice and even. He was the older Payne brother by 14 months, slightly shorter at 6 foot, with a young-looking face. Perfect nose and soft blue eyes. Women in town whispered about him being the objectively more attractive brother, but not as good of a catch as Aaron. Aaron was husband material, the one they praised for grocery shopping and running errands, or so the town gossip went. Little did they know. Lila viewed Jared as stable, and with a seemingly bottomless well of kindness. He'd welcomed her into the family and the community, using his contacts to help launch her real estate career. Jared's work ethic was the problem. It ran at 100% all the time. He spent so many hours in the office that no woman could compete. He dated a few, in more than a casual way, during the almost 4 years Lila had lived there and watched the ritual unravel. None lasted for long. They'd meet, have couples dinners, and then Tara would be traded in for Dawn, and then Linda. Jared's bedroom door tended to be a revolving one. One girlfriend also shared that he liked sex pretty wild. Lila went out of her way not to think about Jared and his bedroom preferences. She wrapped her fingers around her mug and let the warmth of the liquid seep through the ceramic and into her hands. I expect Ginny any minute. He frowned. Who's Ginny? The investigator? There's already one assigned to look for Aaron. Jared dumped a second packet of fake sugar into his coffee. Shit, this is happening too fast. Where the fuck is he? It's not like him to disappear. Not at all. Aaron left a note when he went outside. It was one of the little things she'd found endearing at the beginning of their marriage. Since she'd found the videos, everything he did filled her with rage. So, Jared winced. Did you guys fight? She started to reach her hand across the counter in comfort, then stopped. A foot separated their fingertips, and she didn't want to bridge that yawning abyss. Why would you ask that? Because after 2 days of him sleeping in my guest room weeks ago, I sent him back here to work it out with you. He lifted the mug to his mouth, but didn't take a sip. Did you two settle whatever that was? 6 weeks. It had been just over 6 weeks since they'd gone from a tenuous peace to a showdown. An unexpected coolness washed through her. He didn't come back to your house again, did he? Jared started to talk, then stopped. It was a full minute before he tried again. Aaron refused to give me any details. I got the sense he wasn't over it. Her fault. Jared didn't use the words, but she heard them as if he'd screamed right into her ear. She stood up and went over to the long table stretching across the back of the sofa and separating the kitchen from the living area. She grabbed her laptop, then returned to the bar. Took the open seat next to Jared. I was going to look at our bank accounts and his credit cards to see if that would give us a hint where he went. Hey. Jared put his hand on top of the computer to keep her from lifting the lid. You can't think he walked out on you. He would never do that. Her gaze shifted from his long fingers to that sleek black watch that cost more than most people paid for 6 months of mortgage. Jared's one nod to the mix of money he'd inherited, earned, and stockpiled. After a few seconds, they fell back uncomfortable, unflinching eye contact. He should be at school. I don't understand why he's not. And that was the truth. The SUV should be where she'd parked it. He should be in it. Dead, but there. She turned the mystery over in her head, spun it around, flipped it over. Nothing she did, no matter how much she reasoned it out, led to a comprehensible answer. Was he alive? Injured? Playing with her? I called everywhere I could think he might go if he needed to clear his head, Jared said. That stopped her from fidgeting. She rubbed her hands together under the safety of the bar overhang. What did Aaron tell you about the fight? That you both said some things. I know he regretted however it rolled out. I'm sure he told you that. Jared started to say something else, but stopped when his cell buzzed. He pulled it out of his jacket pocket and read the text on the screen. Brent wants to take the afternoon off and drive around. Doing what? She'd assumed Brent would be the kind to fade into the background if things got tough, and that's how he'd mismanaged his marriage until he finally sputtered to a halt. He'd put more into his friendship with Aaron in 5 hours than he had with caring about his ex-wife's obvious unhappiness and spiraling depression during the last 2 years of their marriage. Lila knew because she'd had a front row seat to that disaster. Looking for Aaron? Jared shrugged. Brent thinks he might have driven to the lake. There are places he likes to go there, like the one hiking trail. Her mind blanked for a second. You think that instead of going to work, Aaron took off on a drive and went hiking? I don't know, Lila. Jared pushed the mug away from him and shifted until he faced her. Look, you can talk to me. She could hear the threat of concern in his voice, see it in his eyes. About what? Anything. I know Aaron can be tough. People think he's outgoing, but we both know he's not emotionally very open. Jared hesitated for a few more seconds before sitting up straight again and leaning away from her. Are you going to be okay with a detective on your own? Investigator. Jared snorted. Is there a difference? I guess we'll see. She'd gone out of her way not to know anything about the intricacies of New York law enforcement, both because she didn't plan to take another bar exam and because she didn't intend to ever return to a courtroom. Okay. He stood up and adjusted the waistband of his dress pants on his waist, trim from hours of running each morning. I'll do a quick drive with Brent, then circle back here to help out and make some calls. I'll have my cell. Text if you hear anything. The second kiss landed in her hair. It was quick and brotherly, and comforting in a way she never expected. She wasn't exactly one to relax and let someone else share the load, but from the moment she'd met Jared, they'd clicked. They understood each other and never needed to verbally vomit their life details to each other. They were reluctant survivors, angry and unwilling to open up and invite more pain. Aaron bonded them, but most days, and especially recently, she preferred spending time with Jared over Aaron. She glanced at the tablet and the podcast site. Jared? He turned around in the doorway to the hall and stopped. Yeah? The hopeful expression, all wide-eyed and waiting, pulled at her, but she let it go. She wasn't even sure what she intended to say when she'd called out to him. It wasn't as if she had anything encouraging to offer. No hope. No empty words about finding Aaron safe. She shook her head. Nothing. Aaron wasn't coming back. But if he did, she'd finish what she started. Chapter 7. Ginny called to say she'd left the office and would be there soon. That was 30 minutes ago. She showed up with a younger man, no uniform on him either, just dark pants and a bright white shirt. When he asked to use the bathroom, she directed him to the one down the hall and told him to do whatever he needed to do. She had nothing to hide. There was no reason to pretend she did. This is a big house. No kids? Ginny ran her finger along the fireplace mantel, hesitating only when it landed on the frame of the one photo sitting there. Lila, standing between Aaron and Jared. The picture was a little more than a year old, and captured a rare moment in time when all three of them looked genuinely happy. It was taken only a few minutes before they headed out on a boat on Cayuga Lake. The bright blue sky and late summer sun had them looking tan and rested. No. Kids or no kids was the one marital decision she and Aaron had made together. Ginny set the photo back on the mantel and turned to face Lila. Walk me through this morning again. This was a game. Lila didn't feel like playing. She sat down in the middle of the couch and opened the laptop she'd carried into the room after Jared left. I got up and he was already gone. That's normal, by the way. Normal? She didn't look up, just kept typing. Do you object to the word? What are you doing? Checking Aaron's bank accounts. Ginny sat down next to her, leaving only a sliver of space between them. As far as pressure moves went, it had its benefits. It likely worked on some. Lila appreciated the intimidation tactics, but she'd learned in her old legal life when to jump and when to ignore. Joint or individual accounts? Ginny asked as she took a pair of glasses out of her jacket pocket and put them on. Both. Lila glanced over. You should wear them. They look good. I'd fall on my face. They're just for reading. Ginny never broke eye contact with the screen. And what are you finding? Nothing.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.